Welcome to my channel. This is Jago Lee. My name is Lee, and I am going to give you 21 thoughts of things that I find interesting about Mexico City. Before I actually give you my thoughts of things, these are not considered bad or good things. They're just things that I just thought were just different, just from being in the city for almost 30 days. Now, before I actually get started, let me just go ahead and say I had a really great time in Mexico City. It's a beautiful city. The people were extremely nice to me. Everywhere I went, I found nothing but people being very nice, courteous, and it was just a wonderful experience. I would definitely come back to the city because I think it's clean, it's beautiful, and the people are extremely nice. So let me go ahead and get into the thoughts or things. I'm going to be looking down because I got them written down and I don't want to miss anything. These are not any particular order. They're just things that I just find again, different just from being here. And I just wanted to make sure I point them out and just say something about them. All right. The first thing I saw was no trash cans. No public trash can. Now, I don't want to say no. I saw a couple here and there, but I can almost count the number of public trash cans I saw in the city of Mexico City. None. You know what I mean? In fact, I experienced it, coming from one of my Spanish class, which was about 30, 40 minutes away. I bought something with a wrapper, and I walked for almost 40 minutes and did not see a trash can to put the paper in. So I think the intended, I don't know how long it's been like that, but it seemed like the intended purpose is to make sure you take your trash home because it worked. I took the trash home. Now, granted, obviously, we have trash cans in the United States. Sometimes people will throw trash right next to the trash can and not throw it in there. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Another thing I found was interesting was, cigarettes. There was a lot of kiosks, a lot of little stands or snack stands that were selling candy, food or whatever, and single cigarettes, not packs. Single cigarettes. I find that interesting. I said that in one of my videos, and someone I assume from Mexico City said, "Oh no," someone who's probably been to Mexico said they do that in the States, and I'm thinking, what city is that? Because I lived in Washington D.C. for 20 years. And in fact, I don't think you can do that. I know people who will ask for a cigarette and get a cigarette from someone or buy a cigarette off an individual, but there was no one selling single cigarette as part of a kiosk or a stand or even part of a store. So not sure where that comes from. The news anchors. Now, I don't know if that happens on every local channel or even every major channel, but every morning since I didn't have any English channels, I would turn on the TV, and since I was in Spanish class, I just turned on the news because it had visuals, it had words, so it just kind of helped me integrate into the city and also learn a little Spanish. But every segment, I guess before the news anchors go to the next hour, they will play a song for maybe like 45 seconds to a minute, and they will pretty much lip sync for that whole 45 seconds and 1 minute. And you see all of them just lip syncing. I think I have a couple clips I want to share with you. So check them out. I think it's interesting. I was thinking, I can't imagine that's happening in the United States, with some of our news anchors, celebrities doing it every single morning. But they seem to be happy, and they don't seem like they're doing it out of, like they're pressured to do it. So I find that really interesting. Stop signs / four-way traffic area. There are no stop signs in that four-way traffic. I'm talking about places where there are no signs or no lights. People do not yield. They do not stop. I think I have the image right here showing that. Yeah, it's like you're on your own. You know what I mean? It's like they're going. They're not going to stop. In the States, if there's a four-way stop area, four-way traffic, and there are no stop signs, you're supposed to stop and then yield for traffic before you move on to the next. Before you move on. But here it's just you keep going, and then you just hopefully no one hits you. I don't know if they have a lot of accident or not, but I found that really interesting. Speaking of traffic, driver's license. Now, I don't know if this is totally true, but we was talking about the whole traffic thing with the instructor, Spanish instructor, and I asked him what do you need to get your license? He said, well, we don't have to take a permit. No, I asked him, do you have to take a permit? He said, nah, we don't have to take a permit. I said, do you have to take a driver's test? He said, no, you just go in and get your license. I said, what? Think about it. At least in Mexico City, no written test and no driver's test to get your license. You just go get your license and pay for it, according to him. If you're out there and he's wrong, please, drop a comment below. Let me know if that's the case. Copies. I mentioned copies because I saw so many copy stands, where you can make copies of something everywhere. They weren't as plentiful as taco stands, but there were definitely a lot of them. They were everywhere. Just like, wow. Why do you need, what's happening here that you need to make that many copies? That you need that, like it's a big business to make copies. They were everywhere. You have some kiosks that were selling drinks, sodas, cigarettes, and making copies. I just find that really interesting. Again, there's a thought, and I thought that was just interesting. Straws. You don't expect straws. Now, it's not to say straws like, straws are used to suck drinks or sodas or whatever. If you go to a fast food restaurant or pretty much go anywhere, you're not going to get a straw. Some places may have them, and some may actually have paper straws. So I guess maybe Mexico City is already ahead of the whole environment, ahead of a lot of country environmentally. I know in certain states and certain cities, they're trying to do away with straws. And even certain companies like Starbucks and places like that are trying to do away with plastic straws. But in Mexico City, you don't get one at all. Some places, again, have them. And then some places, you don't get it automatically. You have to ask for it, if they have them. So I thought that was interesting about straws. Newsstands. Now, that's the cool thing about newsstands, because newsstands are pretty much a dying breed in the United States. But here, they seem to be thriving everywhere. There's plenty of newsstands. They don't seem like they're going out of business. And they seem like, they're here to stay. So I think that's a really good thing. Fruit stand. Now, when I moved here, I follow somewhat of a plant-based, veganish diet, whatever you want to call it. So I knew, okay, going to Mexico City, I'm going to have plenty of good, cheap fruit outside my door or nearby, that it won't be any problem. No, that wasn't the case. Unlike taco stands, there were billions of them everywhere. Taco stands that were selling tacos and tortas and all type of little sandwiches, that on a grill. Fruit stands, you didn't find many of those. Now, it's not to say that you can find fruit at the mercado, which is like somewhere at a distance, but it wasn't like places you were able to buy a fruit stand consistently at every place you go. I actually had to go search for a fruit stand one day to find one. There was one fruit stand and about 25 taco stands. So I was a little disappointed with that. And speaking of fruit, it seemed like when you do find one and you get fruit, it seemed like they ask you if you want to put something on it. They have different things, like whether it's sauce or some type of pepper or something to put on it. And when you tell them no, that you just want the fruit, they look at you like, are you really going to eat that without anything on it? So I thought that was strange. But again, fruit stands was not as plentiful as I thought it would be. Here's another thing that I really thought that I was going to find a lot of: rice and beans. I thought that rice and beans was pretty much like tacos, a staple at every taco stand. So I knew, as someone who followed a plant-based diet, which is rice and beans is definitely one of the items that people who follow that type of diet eat. And I just knew going to Mexico City, I'm going to have plenty of opportunity to have beans and rice, at least 3 or 4 days a week. That's not the case here. In fact, I don't think I found it anywhere, beans and rice. I asked the instructor, the Spanish instructor, like, is this a common food item, staple item in most Mexico City household? He said no. He said we eat it, but it's just like, maybe having ravioli every once in a while or lasagna every once in a while. It's not a normal item that you eat. Now, granted, The only reason I assumed that rice and bean was the state because just about every Mexican restaurant in the States serve rice and beans. As whether you want it or not, it's always on the menu if you want it. So I assume that rice and bean will be on the menu here in Mexico City. Not the case. I don't know if that's the thing in the whole country, but definitely not in Mexico City. Speaking of food, if you ever go to those taco stands, now granted, I found a couple of vegan taco stands that pretty much sold the same thing, but pretty much a vegan version, which is probably some type of soy in most cases. Don't know if it was organic or not, but it was definitely soy because I ate it. And this torta sandwich, I actually had the torta sandwich. Torta sandwich is pretty much is a sandwich in Mexico, whereas torta is pretty much a dessert anywhere else in the Spanish world. So, but the torta sandwich is pretty much kind of like Subway bread with a lot of type meat, a lot of type of protein on it, and it can be really, really heavy. So if you ever order one, don't order two. They're heavy. I actually had two from a vegan kiosk, and also had one from another a vegetarian one. That was the first time I actually had cactus, as part of the vegetarian one. So, but if the sandwich would fill you up, I only were able to eat half at one time and half another time. So, torta sandwich, they're good if you ever come to the Mexico City. Speaking of restaurant, if you've been following my channel, you know that I probably went to quite a few little vegan restaurants, or just restaurant in general, and most of the restaurant had outside seating. And most of the outside seating was either right there at the road, almost in the road. Now, in the road meaning like where a car would be parked at, and there would be no protective barrier around them. So sometimes you'd be sitting there eating, and there'd be a car just like 2 feet right next to you, and there are no protected. I mean, there may be a couple, cones or plants or something like that, but there'll be no type of protection right there next to you. So I don't know if that's ever been an issue, but the cars are not going super fast, but 30, 45 miles an hour with someone who may be distracted, that could be an ugly scene if they just kind of hit you by mistake because you're sitting out there in the road eating. So I just find that was strange that they have no type of protective barrier while they set up these chairs right out there near the road. So let's talk about Metro. Metro was fine. I actually did a video. Metro was fine. The Metro system was pretty clean. It was pretty much timely. It was, pretty much, no problem. Pretty much like any other Metro system I've been in, from my experience. The only problem I have with is the driver or the conductor, the braking issue. I mean, as you notice in one of my videos I did on the Metro, he brakes pretty hard, and I thought that was a one-time issue, but I've ridden the Metro at least 3 or 4 times, and braking is an issue. It's almost like they have no care for the people who ride in the Metro. Whoever's conducting that train have no care at all. I came from Washington, D.C., which has a really decent Metro system, and for the most part, even in that split second, they will kind of give you like, oh, we're about to stop. You know what I mean? So they give you a split second warning that we're about to stop, and he may have to brake hard. Not on the Mexico City Metro. So I found that really strange. Speaking of Metro, one of the things I did like is that they do have a section strictly for women and children. I guess at some point in time in the past, women, face a lot of sexual harassment or sexual assault. So the Metro system or the city, whoever, created one train strictly for women and children, and it's clearly marked off. The women can ride anywhere on the Metro, but there's this place like a safe haven for them to ride strictly on the Metro and feel safe to take the Metro. So I think that's a really, really good thing. Pop-up parade, pop-up protest. I mean, it seemed like every day there was a protest. But then again, I live in Washington, D.C. Protest was a common thing in Washington, D.C. Whether it was one person or 500 people or thousands of people, protest was kind of a common thing in D.C. But the thing about the ones in D.C., they seem to be well organized, at least from a law enforcement perspective, because roads are blocked off hours ahead of time. Not in Mexico City. At least from my experience, unless they're big ones. Because I think in my videos you've seen a couple times where I actually walked through a couple of protests, and those seem to be well organized because all the roads were blocked off, and it seemed like well coordinated. But there have been a couple times where I would just go to like Starbucks. 15 minutes prior, I see no evidence that there'd be some type of protest. No transistor police, that I guess that's what they call them, like traffic police, with weapons. I don't see them anywhere. I go into this Starbucks, I sit there for like 10, 15 minutes, and then all of a sudden I see them appear out of nowhere when I'm looking out the window. They put up the little blue cones, and then like blue tape to block off traffic and to deter traffic. And then it seemed like 5 or 10 minutes later, a protest. I call it a protest parade because they come through. Sometimes it lasts more than 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most. And then 5 minutes after the last person goes through, everything comes down and the traffic flow like nothing else. I saw that happen a lot. So that's why I call it pop-up parade. Shoeshine. Shoeshine is big business here in Mexico City. They were everywhere. There's a kiosk where the Shoeshine, male and female, shining shoes, male and female, getting their shoes shine. Big business. I went to one metro. There was like 12 kiosks, Shoeshine stands where people shining shoes. And then there'd be times like in Roma and Condesa where there's someone roaming around with his own little Shoeshine kit, shining shoes in the park, wherever he can find someone who needs their shoe shine. So Shoeshine is big business here. In the States, I don't think that happens. You find it at really fancy hotels because there are probably some legacy shoe shiners that just been there forever and they just kind of kept them there. And you may see it in some like metro station, like in DC at the Union Station. I saw a few. I don't know if they're still there. So Shoeshine is definitely big business. Dogs and dog walkers. They're first, and this really only applies to the Roma Norte area and Condesa. These are dog walkers, and it seemed like a haven. That area seemed to be a haven for dogs, and all the dogs seemed like they all went to some type of breeding school because most of them were never. Most of the dogs I saw didn't have leash. Now, of course, the dog walkers had maybe 15 dogs walking 15 dogs, and sometimes he may have a Chihuahua and a Great Dane and everything in between, all walking together, all getting along, no problem. And that just would not happen in the United States. And then you can walk right by all the dogs and they won't bark at you or anything like that. Sometimes you wouldn't even hear barking. Now, outside of Roma Norte or Condesa, they regular dogs, you know what I mean? With leash and barking and everything and want to get you and so on and so forth, but not in that area. It seemed like all of them, the dogs in that area, it's almost like a requirement that you had to go to charm school to be part of the lines. Lines, which is everywhere. And I don't want to say like they were related to the current. I'm sure that's part of it, the current situation that's going on that's hitting everybody, the pandemic. These lines, the lines itself didn't bother me, but there were a lot of lines. I think the attitude of the people in the lines, it's almost like they're not bothered that the line is not moving. They're not bothered that they're there for a while. And sometimes they line up for just things that you wouldn't expect people to line up. I saw a line. I was heading towards, I don't have a visual for that, but I was heading toward that line. I think I don't. And I assumed it was a bank coming up. And the line was super long. And when I got towards the front of the line, it was just some type of food stand. They was cooking something. It wasn't tacos, but it was something that very popular that everybody wanted, and they were willing to wait for it. And the attitude, the people were just smiling and laughing. There was no frustration at all. They was like, they waited there patiently. So I thought that was just interesting that they waited into those lines. So I forgot to add street cleaning. That seemed like it's 24/7. 6 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I see it at 9, 10 o'clock at night, street cleaning. Mexico always keeping their street clean, at least in the areas I was in. Liquor store at Walmart. That's just unheard of in the United States, at least where I was in the DMV. Liquor store at Walmart, they wouldn't last, not where I was at. And women carrying their livelihood, stuff that they sell at the flea market and places like that, on their backs. It's just, see that early in the morning, see it late at night. Again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.